Well, hi, and welcome back to my next audio podcast. The last one was focused on the latest theory of quantum gravity, where our final masquerade of mending the forces may just lie in 11-dimensional hyperspace. However, in doing so, I briefly mentioned the possible origin of the very tool we rely ever so much to orchestrate this ideology, which perhaps has itself seated right in the front row of our own story, which seems to be told by none other than the universe itself. Now, although this sounds just like my previous statements, intended to make clear the possible link or links between science and spirituality, it has its merits. Because not only haven't we any real theory with the ability to adequately explain consciousness, we do have, surprise surprise, quantum theory, our best and brightest, which seems definitely able to shine some light on the tricky aspects of mind. It's interesting just to note that when you think about who, or what I should say, kick-started the disciplinary field of scientific endeavour, that is in its entirety, us of course. Our consciousness is therefore intertied with respect to our desire to understand the world, and if it's interlinked with experience, of which the spiritual would seem to be part, then it sort of raises the question of how much the airtight methodology of our scientific paradigm is ultimately a spiritual crusade in its own right. Indeed, the emerging field of neurotheology attempts to provide neuroscientific explanation for spiritual/religious experience. Anyways, this is indeed tricky because it strikes right at the heart of experience itself, and this is where we become immersed in what it means to be conscious in the first place. So even if quantum theory fails at giving us the answer to life, the universe, and everything, it's at least put us on a new and indeed revolutionary path, where it's transformed our picture of mind to something somewhere between man and machine. On the line where the relationship between mind and matter becomes more to do with the relationship between mind and spirit. And this swears a bridge of understanding for both us and the world around us, which of course naturally brings in the question of how different we really are to the world out there. And perception is key here, because I don't mean to say that there isn't something physical out there, at least physical by means of interaction, not necessarily physical by nature, which I might add physics seems to have shown to be of. Just that it seems to be decoded by the brain, and we're the ones who project it along with our own opinionated selves, and this becomes our reality tunnels, which form individual collages, which in turn form the palette for all our lives. This hands and leaves us with the fascination that if we cannot differentiate exactly where we end and everything else begins, so to speak, then perhaps, just maybe, we aren't so different. That which is seemingly a part of ourselves, or our awareness or consciousness, however you will, is really leaking out into the world around us, even to the point where our very real experience of our thoughts being inside our skulls and personal to us are actually playing themselves out all around us. And so it begs the question, given that quantum theory appears to stand for all matter, then the question of experience may well be within a quantum leap. In saying that, I mentioned in my previous podcast, Basics of M-Theory, that the closest thing we have to mind over matter is essentially the quantum, and its behavior doesn't even come close, to making sense in the world we experience every day, the classical domain, where quantum mechanics would seem to take on a very clever disguise indeed, basically what we see. And so, getting to the point, in the wake of this revelatory real world, its application to the brain has proven to be quite interesting in how it has tied the workings of the mind to the rest of the universe in such a way that it makes clear a hidden but nevertheless fundamental level of information at the depths of the universe. At least this is the case with one theory, it being one of the most prominent in the field. At these depths, the information may be so ripe and plentiful that the very essence of our experience, of which values seem to be a major part, may even be coming into existence. This ideology, along with the bizarre nature of the quantum, form the basis for the theory of quantum consciousness, or QC, also referred to as the quantum mind in the case of theories relating to quantum brain dynamics, or QBD, which I'll mention at the end. So with this in mind, it goes that via the process of quantum superposition, where something like an electron can exist in multiple positions or states simultaneously, Given enough time, this is thought to lead to what's called a threshold, where energies involved become too great, and that which is in superposition collapse into one state, all the while being fed through the brain via microtubules, which are cylindrical protein structures making up the skeletal support or cytoskeleton for the neuron, as well as being organizers of intracellular activities, just like the other cells of the body. In other words, the very things that hold the neuronal cell together are thought to mediate quantum computation in the brain. This ideology has been applied to other such species as the paramecium, which is a single-celled microorganism, where the existence of microtubules in it are thought to be responsible for its seemingly complex behavioral abilities, given that it doesn't have a nervous system, etc. So the processes involved with this revolve and evolve, I should say, around the network of microtubules which are littered in amazing numbers throughout each and every neuron, which now takes us into the domain of the quantum processes involved in the progression of this information, in the form of global quantum coherence. And by global I just mean everywhere or brain-wide, as it happens in a multitude of neurons in one big charade. And according to theory, it's all being orchestrated by the interactions of tiny tubulin dimers, proteins making up the microtubules, whereby the little proteins carry the information I mentioned before towards a threshold. And not to mention the action of MAPs, or microtubule-associated proteins, that form protein-like networks amongst the microtubules themselves, connecting them all. While this is happening, it's entangled or in a state of instantaneous communication over the area or areas involved in the processing in the brain. Hence, because of this, the collapse from superposition I mentioned earlier is more so the end result of this information entanglement, whereby our experiential qualities such as self and being and so forth actually come into being at this point. Basically, it's the evolution of quantum mechanics in the midst of unstable space-time that eventually give rise to not only our experience of the world, but our qualia, or subjective sense of things. In a sense, we are picking up the universe's mind, or, as I like to say, we are looking through the eyes of the universe. So it all basically comes down to the mysterious workings of quantum mechanics, in how it can feed its way through our brains in the form of orchestrated coherence amongst the countless billions of neurons, and making its way into a manifested form of our experience. It's also predicted from the theory that our experience is occurring some 40 times per second via a special waveform in the brain oscillating back and forth called gamma synchrony, where it's so fast we don't notice it, just like a movie, otherwise we'd probably go crazy. From the name, this seems to organize via synchrony the discrete but continuous stream of these quantum events happening in the neurons, which make their way to the macroscopic electrical activities of the brain that conventional scientific methods pick up during brain scans. Nevertheless, however it is that the universe can manifest itself in such a way, quantum theory still seems able to provide us with a mind. Whether or not it means the universe itself is conscious is another question. Still, in our frame of reference, when it comes to applying this idea to the rest of reality, it seems that these quantum collapse scenarios may very well be happening everywhere, like raindrops in a gigantic pond, with the qualities of experience happening momentarily all the time, and the so-called panpsyism, where matter is also conscious to a certain degree, more so phenomenal awareness. May be the one to see us through after all. Now, although this theory termed orchestrated objective reduction, officially abbreviated as ORC-OR, or ORC-OR, depending, the objective reduction part, referring to the quantum collapse described, developed by English theoretical physicist Roger Penrose, along with US anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff, for the last 20 years, does have significant implications. It's only one part of the relatively long history which is aimed at explaining consciousness through the eyes of quantum theory. A unique and incredible journey that took hold around the 1960s, where it centered on applying quantum field theory to the workings of the brain, which I will do a podcast on in the future. Even to this day, the ideology surrounding the relationship of microtubules and focused electromagnetic fields make up only some of the dynamics of the complexities of brain activity, and is far from over. But it seems all these aspects join together along the timeline to form an amazing new picture of mind, a picture with the universe as the artist and the brain as the orchestrator, which at this point I should mention may even bring us to a sort of quantum spirituality. Not to mention seeming to be, at the moment at least, our best scientific explanation for out-of-body and near-death experiences, assuming they are realities unto themselves, of course. I should also put forth, just to be a little thorough, that it's been that the brain couldn't be a fully functioning quantum computer due to it being too warm and noisy, to put it lightly. However, without getting into the research which you can find reference to in the works of Hameroff and Penrose in regards to this theory, of which a host of information is available on the website www.quantumconsciousness.org, among others, we should keep in mind, not hinting at reductionism, that the brain, like other matter, is still reducible to quantum phenomenon, or quantum reality as it's called. And so, why not? Anyways, catch you on the next podcast where I'll move on to the awesome power of dark matter and dark energy. Hope to have you listening for that. Thanks.